It's time to take command with former NFL tight end Logan Paulsen and former Commanders beat reporter Craig Hoffman.
Take Command podcast from Odyssey Sports. I'm Craig Hoffman. That is Logan Paulsen. And Logan, in a couple minutes, we have an incredible conversation with your former college teammate and one of the guys that Eric Bieniemy helped launch into a borderline Hall of Fame career.
Yeah.
Maurice Jones-Drew is going to join us from NFL Network in just a little bit. But first, kick around a couple things, and then we'll get to the chat with MJD. First, the staff movement, real quick. As we record this, it's about 2:30 p.m. on, what's today, Wednesday. So we know that Drew Terrell is going to leave. We know that Jim Hostler, the senior offensive assistant, is going to leave. We still are waiting to hear on Matzkow. There's a report from Jeremy Fowler that Zampese is probably going to stick around, but might not be at quarterbacks. What do you make generally of all the movement, especially Terrell, probably the brightest young coach on the staff, headed out to Arizona?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's great for Terrell. I think that's what you want. I think a lot of people were very critical of the staff and saying there wasn't a lot of kind of young talent. And here's an example of a guy who's young and very talented. And, I think there's, maybe a little bit of like, why wasn't he promoted sooner, or why didn't they try to promote him internally or give him an opportunity to work with EB? But really happy for Terrell. I think the remainder of the staff movement is interesting. It'll be interesting to see what happens with Zampese. I think they'll want to keep him around because by all accounts seems to have an outstanding relationship with Sam Howell. So want to see that some more. And then I think the big one is Matzkow, like whether or not they kind of jive him and EB and whether the philosophies work, because as much as people kind of forget about the offensive line coach, he's really your fourth coordinator, your defensive coordinator, offensive coordinator, special teams, and then your O-line coach is usually paid and treated like a coordinator on the staff. So a very important position. Be interesting to see what happens with that over the next couple of days.
In terms of timeline, how important is this to get done quickly? Because the combine is next week.
Yeah. It's not, I don't think it's as important because I was listening to a former GM did an interview today with PFF, and he was talking about how they kind of lay out their board, regardless of staff, so they're going to go through kind of multiple processes here. So Marty, and that team, the scouting department are going to kind of give everyone an evaluation, place them into buckets, regardless of position, Blue being that top tier player and, top tier regardless of position. So tackles, corners, running backs, who's ever in there, and then kind of work down. And then I think once the staff's in place, which will be, hopefully in the next couple of days, next week maybe, they will start being able to give them, assists with free agents in terms of watching film and kind of completing their evaluation, and also kind of finalizing their draft process of the prospect. So all that stuff kind of working together, not super critical now, but it will be very critical that this gets done sooner rather than later.
Yeah, I guess the thing with the combine is it's your first big interview opportunity.
Yeah, it'd be nice if
everyone's there.
Yeah.
And so, like, Senior Bowl, okay, fine. It's a very select group of prospects. It's better if you can have people in place, but it's not that big of a deal. And, I didn't even care that Rivera wasn't there, frankly. That's fine. When you start to get to the combine is when, at this point, all your postseason stuff is done. It's time for the coaches to get involved in the process. And to have the coaches, it's not just like looking at the tape, and that can be done whenever. Look at the tape. Does this guy fit what we want to do? But ultimately, especially for like a first round pick, and they're probably looking O-line, so like deciding if Matzkow is going to be the guy or not seems pretty important to prioritize. Like these are, you only get like a certain amount of interviews at the combine. Yeah. Not that you can't bring those players in your draft visits or go see them at their pro days, and there are other ways around it. It's not the end of the world. And look, sometimes coaches and front offices don't want to telegraph what they're doing, and so they're like, yeah, we're going to play hard to get. We're never going to talk to a guy. We'll do our background research, and then we'll draft him, and he'll be stunned. And like, I don't think I would go with that process, but it happens.
Yeah, I guess.
But I do feel like getting it in place for next week, it would be a huge coup, and like I would be really pressing if I was Bieniemy and Rivera to get everything solidified.
100%. But I guess what I'm saying is that like it's not. It is significant. I'm not saying it's insignificant because you want your O-line coach to have an interaction with some of the prospects in the draft. However, it's not the end of the world, I guess is what I'm saying. Like they have enough kind of tiers in place already, you know, from an evaluation standpoint, that you can trust Ron's opinion, you can trust Marty's opinion, you can trust Bieniemy's opinion, because he's going to be there, no doubt about it, to interview some of these prospects. So as long as those people are here, like, would it be awesome if there was, if the actual O-line coach was there? 100%. But what I'm saying is it's not the end. It's not the end of the world if they don't have that guy. Would it be nice? Absolutely. But I think they have enough, again, like I said, evaluation structures in place at this moment that they can survive him not being there and still come out with some good evaluations.
All right, last thing real quick before we get to the conversation with MJD. Taylor Lewan released today by the Titans, or will be released by the Titans, depending on when you hear this and when the processing goes through. Charles Leno's there at left tackle. He's fine. Not someone you couldn't upgrade over, but you can do a whole lot worse than Leno. His numbers, not terrible, but Lewan is certainly been at a higher level throughout his career, albeit the last couple of years, not so much because of injury. Would you be kicking the tires on Taylor Lewan, and what kind of price tag would it take to do that?
I would 1,000% be kicking the tires on Taylor Lewan. I think he's an excellent football player. Obviously, the injury history is tough to deal with, but he's one of the best athletes at the position in all of football. Obviously, struggled a little bit last year with some drop back passing, pass protection type situations. But I think I would definitely kind of see what he wants, see what he's looking for, because you never know if the situation's right for you. Because I would guess he's probably looking for like that $15 to $16 million a year range. That's just a total guess. I haven't looked up anything on it. You know, I just found out he was going to get released right this second. But I do think that there's value there. Let's say it's at 10 or 9.5. You could get him for by some miracle, right? The market's not what he thought or what he thinks, and you can get him in here, right? You can move Leno to right tackle, potentially move him to guard. There are things you can do to accommodate a football player like that. And again, the price tag has to be right. The situation has to be right. But I would definitely explore that. You know, like I said, like even with the Derek Carr thing, you want to know what the market is, because quite frankly, this offensive line class is relatively weak. You've got Orlando Brown, who is going to ask for a ton of money. You got Caleb McGarry, who I expect Atlanta to re-sign, but if not, kind of a very specific scheme fit in terms of a run-first approach. Taylor Lewan on the market is a big deal now, because it's adds a little bit of depth, gives you some flexibility in free agency. It makes you a little bit less reliant on the draft. And I think if the situation is correct, I think that's the right thing to do.
That is an interesting thought, to move Leno to right tackle, because he's played some right tackle.
I think he has
correctly.
I'd have to look it up, but
yeah, I think he has. Obviously, now people will correct us if we're wrong in the comments, because that's what the comment section was made for. But I mean, the thing is with Leno, like, you could cut him and save if you do post June 1st, like, save like $10 million in cap space. And if that's what it's going to take to sign Lewan, yeah. I mean, Leno's an interesting contract to look at. He's set to make 12 this year, set to make 14 next year. But the way it was structured, it's not terribly painful to move on. You can release him outright pre-June 1, save almost $8 million, and have about $4.5 million in dead space. Post June 1 release, you have 2.2 in dead cap this year, 2.2 in dead cap next year, and you save $10 million this year on the cap.
Wow. So that is interesting. You know, that's kind of what they did with Morgan too, right? There was a little bit of dead money associated with that cut, and it ended up working out. I think Leno's obviously catching a lot of heat, and I think rightfully so in certain situations. But I think overall, you look at him and you say he's a B-ish, C+ left tackle, which is a passable grade at the position. And so I think you feel pretty good about him, you know, playing some football for you, especially at that number, given some things you have to do for paying in terms of extension. But if you get Taylor Lewan at a similar number, I would definitely explore that, you know. And I'm not advocating cutting Charles, because I think, like I said, he had some mistakes at kind of glaring moments. He was nursing an injury the entire year and played through it. So I have a lot of respect for what Charles did. And I don't think you necessarily need to move on. But, you know, I've said this before on the podcast, and it is a little bit heartless of me to say, but as a, you know, someone who's empathizing with the team and looking to win championships, you're always looking to upgrade at every position if the price is correct. And I would definitely look at this price tag and see if the situation works for Washington.
I also now have pulled up his Pro Football Reference. He's listed as tackle his first year in Chicago, so he might have played a little right tackle as a rookie, but has played predominantly left tackle.
Which is always a tough switch, like you saw how teams have
batting righty versus batting lefty.
Right, it's tough. So, I'm not sure that's a feasible thing, but I would definitely, like I said, whether it's the right thing or not for him, I would definitely explore that. And because I think Taylor Lewan, again, like I said, he had the highest RAS score like ever in the history of the combine. I think it was a perfect 10, which is crazy to think about. RAS, raw athletic score. So obviously a tremendous athlete, a lot of upside. Recent history has not been kind to him.
Question is that what is he coming off the injuries?
Sure.
And that's and he, Leno's I think a little bit older than Lewan, but Leno's been healthy, relatively speaking, compared to the season ender that Lewan had. All right. So we will continue, obviously, to monitor that stuff and get into that deeper as we head towards free agency. But next, we are joined by NFL Network analyst Maurice Jones-Drew. Joining us now on Take Command, he is an analyst for the NFL Network, played 9 years in the NFL, and before that, he played at a very small football school called UCLA. Guys, did I get the letters right there?
That is correct, yeah.
Okay, we was a teammate of Logan Paulson, it says here. Paulson.
That is true. Yep.
It's Maurice Jones-Drew. MJD, welcome to the podcast.
Oh, thank you, man. Listen, I really have to say this. The only reason I did it is because I saw Logan's name was on there. So
that's fine.
I just make sure I do the best I can for my guy, man. Because people don't understand what it was like at UCLA. It was kind of before all the rules and all that, so many hours and all that stuff. And we put in a lot of work there, and very excited to see Logan's career, how it ended up and how it went. And now you're on the media side. So welcome to the dark side.
Yeah, I mean, I followed you. I thought, man, that Maurice has it figured out. I'm just give it a nice little follow there. So you paved the way, man. Let me tell you.
I appreciate
for once,
that.
Maurice paved the way for you as opposed to the other way.
Exactly.
It's true.
Now, of course, there was another pretty relevant person who was with you guys at UCLA, and that is Eric Bieniemy. So I want to start talking a little bit about EB and what we think it'll look like here with him as the OC, and then we can circle back to some UCLA story time. But I'll start with this simply, Maurice. Like when he got the job, or as it was kind of unfolding over the last week or so, what did you think about the fit from Eric's side of things, and then from the Washington side of things?
Well, first and foremost, there's been some chatter about him as a coach or not, and I always tell people, like, if you've never been in a room with him, if you've never sat down, and don't get me wrong, he is hard. He's a hard coach, and I've never been around a coach in my whole career that hasn't been hard and people haven't been successful. So if you look at his track record before I got to UCLA, he was with Chris Brown, who was up for the Heisman Trophy. He was his running back coach at Colorado. One of the reasons I ended up following him from Colorado to UCLA. From there, he goes and takes Chester Taylor, who was in Minnesota before Adrian Peterson. He has a Pro Bowl year. Right? He was a third down backup in Baltimore, goes to Minnesota, becomes a Pro Bowler. Obviously, Adrian Peterson goes out. Then he goes to Jamal Charles in Kansas City, where Kansas City struggled. And between that stint from Minnesota to Kansas City, he was the OC of the University of Colorado. Okay, now the questions this is where I think things get a little tricky before I kind of get into why it fits. He called plays there. They were in a rebuild situation. That class they ended up recruiting ends up winning the Pac-12 maybe 3-4 years later, right? So they were recruiting and building a thing before they end up all getting fired, I think after 2 years at Colorado. Goes to Kansas City. Jamal Charles is still, I think, has the highest yards per carry average of his career in the NFL. And then last but not least, it's not by chance the Kansas City Chiefs have been to 5 AFC Championship games and 3 Super Bowls while him being the OC. Now, like I said, LaShawn McCoy has gone out and he said some things about him. He doesn't appreciate, the way he's talked to people, or Andy Reid kind of ran the offense and all those things. Like, that's what Andy Reid does. He's always ran the offense. He's always had his imprint on that. I've never not seen Andy Reid with a play call sheet in his hand. If it was Doug Peterson, if it was Matt Nagy, whoever the OC was at the time that he always had a play call sheet in his hands because he helps develop plays. That's part of what happens. I think it was important for him to kind of branch away and show that he can obviously call plays by himself. But let's not take into consideration when Patrick Mahomes became the starter, Eric Bieniemy became the OC at the same time. He won an MVP. He was Super Bowl MVP. He's done that twice. They've won 2 Super Bowls since he's been there. My question is, can Kansas City do it again without him being there? And the reason I say that is he has a uncanny ability to hold everyone accountable. I mean, Logan, we've been in college together. If Logan didn't block his guy, even though he was coached by one of the best tight end coaches that I've seen in the game, in John Embry, Eric Bieniemy would say something about it. If I didn't do my job, he would tell me about it. No matter, I was an All-American. I mean, it doesn't matter if you're all pro. It doesn't matter anything. He's going to hold you accountable to doing your job. And that's what it takes to be a champion. Now, some people can't handle that type of coaching, and that's on that person. But to me, I think you're going to see a new offense that is going to be crisp, explosive, the attention to detail. He doesn't leave any stone unturned. I mean, listen, we would be in UCLA in protection meetings for 2 hours, and we ran the football, right? We didn't throw the ball at UCLA. If we did, we threw it to a tight end on a seam route off a play action pass. Like, every stone was unturned. And so to me, I think it's a huge get for Washington. I think now I don't know who the quarterback is going to be. If it's going to be Sam Howell, they're going to go in the draft and draft someone. But it doesn't matter to me. You have playmakers there, and those guys are all going to, the level's going to be played up because he's not going to allow you to go into a game unprepared for any situation that the defense gives you. So I think it's a great fit. I think it's a great fit for him to kind of run this show. I think it's a great fit for Washington kind of get some new blood in there and a different attitude.
My question is, like, you guys are relatively close, EB, but why is it taking him so long? Like, I have a lot of respect for him. Like, why is it taking so long for him to get this opportunity? And this opportunity, which is kind of, not a perfect opportunity, I guess.
I think there's multiple reasons, right? Like, some people believe like why hasn't he gotten a head coach? I can't answer that question. Obviously, I've talked to multiple owners about this, including Jacksonville, who hired Doug Peterson. And I spoke highly, like, listen, I know what he's going to bring, and it's going to be an atmosphere of work. It's going to be hard, but it's not going to be something that you're not able to, you'll see the results quickly, right? The fruits of your labor. But it's on those guys to hire him, right? That, like, if I'm driving if I have a car, I want to put rims on it, I'm going to put rims on it. I'm going to do it's mine. So it's their franchise. They can do whatever they want. And so I always tell people, like, they're going to hire who they're most comfortable with and who they feel most comfortable with. Are they right all the time? Obviously not, because every year there's 6 or 7 coaches that get fired. Some coaches off of 1 year, as we saw this year in Denver. So I can't really tell you why the opportunity to be a head coach hasn't been there. But for an OC, it's not a lot of running back coaches get that opportunity, right? They always give them to quarterbacks, or even some tight end coaches are now starting to get those opportunities. But I always tell people, at least I was trained by him and other running back coaches to be the second quarterback, right? I played with a lot of rookie guys. So I had to know, as a running back, you have to know the running game, the blocking scheme. You have to know the passing concepts. Especially if you're an Alvin Kamara, Christian McCaffrey type, a Dalvin Cook type, where you're lined up at wide receiver. So you have to have that knowledge, and that coach has to be able to help you, obviously, as you go on. If you watch Jamal Charles's career, you saw him they got him out of the backfield a ton. A lot of that was EB, thinking outside the box. So I'm excited. I think more than anything, this is an exciting opportunity for him to be able to, you have Jack Del Rio and Ron Rivera, who are all defensive coaches. Right? Like, that is the brain trust in Washington is defensive coach, right? Defensive minded. So you literally get to run everything. What I'm excited about is, Terry McLaurin, your 2 running backs in Gibson and Robinson. My guy from Ohio State, his name is slipping me right now.
Curtis
Samuel, right? Logan Thomas, if he's healthy and comes back, right? Like, you have playmakers out there. You got to fix the offensive line a little bit, but you have the ability to be able to be explosive. I expect him to use Curtis Samuel the same way they use Tyreek Hill, right? Finding ways to get them going. And so I'm excited to see what his offense looks like without, that umbrella of Andy Reid on top of it.
How do you think it will be different? Like, obviously he's going to take a lot from Reid, which is a good thing because Andy Reid's pretty freaking smart. But what do you think are some things that maybe he does a little bit differently, or some of the core principles of his offense that if you're just a fan watching on Sundays, or if you have a more highly elevated understanding of the game and you're breaking it down, that you will see in an Eric Bieniemy offense that is truly EBs as opposed to the kind of collaborative nature of what he's been running in Kansas City?
I hope they bring the fullback back, to be honest with you. Like that, to me, everyone's in this 11 spread, all this stuff. Like, yeah, you bring a fullback back and you start beating people up, all of a sudden the passing game becomes simple because now they have to load the box. You make it simple for any quarterback that comes in. I thought Brian Robinson did a great job of running downhill. Antonio Gibson, you can move him around. You have two. Then you have okay, I slipped my mind again. You're gonna have to edit this. The smaller running back. I was with them. I've been doing
DJ McKissick.
No,
or
not
McKissick or
JD
Jared Patterson.
Jared Patterson. I trained Jared Well, I
Did you
trained
really?
with him in Miami. We have the same agent. So you have, even with McKissick, you have another receiver, a former receiver. Like, you have players that you can utilize. But I think going downhill and really setting the tone of games, if you look at some of the teams that were more physical, like the Niners, for example. The Niners played with their third and fourth string quarterback and still were just wearing teams out because they were a physical team. And it's hard for teams to account for when everyone's in 11 and 4 receivers and whatever it may be. And so I think you'll see Logan Thomas line up a little bit wider than, what you've seen just because of the Travis Kelce element there. But to me, I think you're going to see a more physical, and I know Scott Turner is a good friend of mine as well. He was more of a shotgun physical run, right? Shotgun runs. I think you're going to see more outside zone, inside zone, maybe some ISO in there, which sets up your play action pass and still the ability to spread teams out and attack them with bubble screens and slip screens and down the field shots.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And so, like, everyone talks about EB and kind of how abrasive he is, and you talked about that. Like, I remember a story about you in college, and this was one of my most vivid college memories. We were doing blitz pickup, okay? And you were out there and you went to the right guy, and the offensive line screwed it up, right? They let someone go free. And I remember he yelled at you like I've never seen anybody get yelled at. And this is like when you're up for like the Heisman, like you're in that kind of conversation. And he kind of just yelled at you in a way that I was like, what is going on? And I was like, why is he yelling at me? Go to the right guy. And then you were like, I went to the right guy. He's like, I don't give an F, man. You got to make him right. And I was like, that is like the standard. He's got like this absolute crystal standard. Do you think everybody can handle that? I'm not sure.
That's the thing. Like, I don't know if everyone can handle it. But he's going to push you to your limits, right? He's not going to allow you to get complacent. I mean, I could tell you, so the year before you got there, we played in Washington, right?
Uh-huh.
And I broke the Pac-12 record and almost set the NCAA record for yards in a game. 326 yards in a game. And when we came back to the meeting, he was like, oh, this is going to be a quick meeting, short, like nothing easy, light. I was like, oh, cool. We're going to see all my good plays. No. He showed every run play that I missed the hole where I could have rushed for 500 yards because the expectation is to be perfect, right? And if you're striving to be perfect, being great is nothing. And so that was his mindset going forward. And look, I was a 17-year-old freshman dealing with this, but over time you understand as I gotten older, I appreciate that. I'd rather you tell me to my face what's going on instead of what some coaches do. They wait till they get in these other meetings with other coaches. Well, he didn't do it. Like, tell me so I can try to fix it,
Right.
And I think a lot of players don't want to hear the truth sometimes, right? Because like, well, I'm great. I've done this and I've done that. Like, no, I want to be perfect. I want you to tell me, like, my mindset was always about trying to be the best player, period. Not the best that I could be. I want to be known as the best. And obviously we had Reggie Bush in LA at the time.
Yeah.
We had so many guys. So there were some days that he got on my nerves a little bit, but I understood what the purpose of it was, right? It was to be the best ever. And so this, like you said, like the offensive line might have messed up and he'd have been like, well, you should have jumped on their guy.
Yeah.
Right. You saw your guy being blocked. You should have went to their guy. Right. And so the standard of expectation that he holds you to is some people may say unreasonable, but
no, I get you. I got you.
Like, again, like I always tell people, everyone that played in that backfield with me at UCLA or was coached by Bieniemy maximized their career, right? Michael Petrie was our fullback. He's a running back coach for the Falcons right now.
Yeah.
But he maximized his career. He was able to go to Chicago and play. He got in the coaching. He's able to maximize his career because he understands what the what the expectation is. And what people don't understand about EB, he played 9 years in the league.
Mm-hmm.
And he played behind some great players. And he had to fight and claw every day to try to be a starter for the Chargers or the Bengals. He had to play special teams. He had to do all the things that we had to do. And he understood what it took to get to be the best of the best, right? And so that's how he coaches. And again, that's why you see production.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people like misconstrue that aggressive demeanor as like a kind of a maliciousness, but he does like legitimately care about you. And he's like trying to advocate for that.
Bro, Logan, a couple years ago, I was going through like kind of a, you retire, you're trying to figure life out. We all go through our little stuff. And I saw him at the combine. He stopped working. Mm-hmm. This is what people don't understand. Like, he was like, hey, I want you to come hang out with me all week. So literally all week, I'd wake up, I'd go with him. I'd sit in there with him and Andy Reid. So we go to lunch together, breakfast, dinner, and we would just talk because he cares about you as a person, right? Like, yes, he like I said, he got on me and rode me, but I'm like a son to him because our bond and how we work. And so I try to tell people, like, yes, he has an aggressive nature, but we play an aggressive sport. Mm-hmm. I want my play caller to try to score I've been around play callers that are like, oh, we just want to score 21 points a game. Like, who wants that?
Right.
I want a play caller that wants to go for 50, 60 points, put your foot on their throat and crush it, right? I want that type of mindset. But you just don't get that type of mindset by just calling plays and just being happy-go-lucky all the time. Like, you get that attitude in your offense takes the demeanor of their play caller by the way they coach. And I think that's something that, I'm excited to see how the Commanders handle it.
So that's really interesting that you mentioned that, because I was listening to an interview earlier today with Brad Childress, who is obviously the Vikings head coach, who hired EB, gave him his first job that Chester Taylor season, and then ultimately the position coach for Adrian Peterson. And he talked about how one of the things that Bieniemy will certainly understand is kind of his role within the Commanders ecosystem. This is a defense-first football team. Valuing the ball, time of possession is going to be very important. It's how they won games when they did win them last year. Yet, having the aggressiveness to be like, no, we're trying to score every drive. It seems like he has a really fine balance between those things, because you hear you say one thing and then Childress say the other that seem to be opposed but aren't. Like, how does he balance that and kind of his understanding of, what needs to be done beyond scoring points, but the kind of place this offense will have within the Commanders' ability to win games?
Well, I think situational football, right? Each situation depends on a certain play call, a certain mindset going into it. Is it 4-minute mode? So we'll practice. Logan will tell you, we used to practice 4-minute mode at UCLA live.
Yeah.
I mean, guys are getting destroyed out there, right? He harped on that. If it's 2-minute situation live, like, he understands the importance of the situations, goal line, short yardage, third downs. We call it rundowns, first and second down, right? Depending on end of the half, end of the game, it's all situational based. And this is the thing. I could care less how great of a defense you have. Scoring points makes everyone happy, right? Like, I just watched the 30 for 30 on the Baltimore Ravens. They went a whole month without scoring a touchdown. Like, come on, man. Like, I don't care how great of a defense you are. If someone scores points and gives you a lead, you're happy about it. You're ecstatic about it. And so, yeah, you still want to possess the clock. And I was with Jack Del Rio in Jacksonville. We'd go on 18-play drives, but we would score at the end. What's the purpose of going on an 18-play drive and punting the ball or missing a field goal or kicking a field goal?
We had a couple last year. It doesn't go great.
No,
not good.
At the end of the day, you want to score points. And I think that's the biggest thing with Bieniemy is he's going to bring a mindset of we're going to be aggressive in nature, right? You could be aggressive running the football. You can be aggressive throwing screens. You can be aggressive passing the ball, and it doesn't necessarily have to be down the field, right? But it may be a 3rd and 1, and you don't take a shot, you throw it 12 yards instead of going for a run on first down, right? Like, or on 3rd down to get the first. And then there's certain situations that you do that you go. And the other part is this. I love this about Bieniemy. He's not afraid to take something out of the playbook, right? Like, he used to threaten us with that. Again, I shouldn't say threaten, but he used to tell us like, well, if you can't get this done, we're not going to run it, which to me is the smartest thing ever in the world. Because why would I put you in a situation to be bad, right? If we can't practice and run this play and have confidence in it as a group, and not the group being 11 guys on the field, but the 22 guys that are on offense, right? Or how many ever guys you have suited up on offense. If I can't run that with my third left tackle or my second left tackle or my third running back or whoever it may be, my backup quarterback, I'm not confident in that. And you saw that in Kansas City. When Chad Henne went in the game against, it had to be the Jaguars, I think.
Yeah, it was the Jags.
It's only right against the Jags. He does this, right? The game is on the line, and they come out and they run stick. A simple play, but every play after that they ran, there's something that they were confident in that Chad can do, and there was the same plays that Mahomes could do. And so to me, I've been with teams and I've seen plays and I've talked to players where offensive coordinators have 1,000 plays in their play sheet and call 60 of them in a game.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? I'd rather go in there with 30 plays and call those plays 3 and 4 times in a row to get to 60, right? And so I think it's important that is, even though as a 17-year-old I called it a threat, but it wasn't a threat. It was like, if we can't do it, if I can't trust that you can do it, I'm not going to put you in that situation to not be successful.
And there's better stuff, right? There's better stuff in your playbook that you feel good about. And I think to your point, I think like, even though they're, scoring points is so important, like his aggressive nature in situational football, kind of what you were alluding to there, is also an advantageous situation for this offense, right? He's going to scheme up that 3rd and 1 to put you in the best position to be successful. So I think even if you don't want to score a ton of points, like for whatever reason, you want to lean on the defense, like he has an ability to kind of attack each segment of the game in a really high level way, which I think is going to be very, very valuable. So I'm looking forward to seeing him here. I'm looking forward to talking to him a little bit. It's an exciting opportunity.
I got to say this to you guys too, because it's so funny. The staff that I first went to UCLA with, Kyle Shanahan was a GA.
Dude.
So he learned a lot of what we did at UCLA. He learned and still runs with the Niners. Yeah. Obviously his tree comes off of that as well. The back of that, Tom Cable, one of the better offensive line coaches in the game, was on that staff as well. Obviously you were there, Logan. Dino Babers, one of the top. He had Syracuse rolling for a little bit.
Go Orange. Finally, we hit my alma mater.
But what I'm trying to tell, like that staff
yeah.
and that knowledge that those guys have, and then on top of the Andy Reid staff and the resource that he could reach out to and the people, like it's unlimited. And so I'm not saying he's going to be the Niners offense. I'm not saying that, but you're going to see glimpses of it. You'll see motions and shifts and maybe a fullback in there, some outside zone, more physicality. You'll see some play action pass off of that. And so to me, I think it's an exciting time to be a Commanders fan. I think, I think before it's an exciting time, I think you got to figure out who's going to be your quarterback. I know Ron Rivera's kind of told everybody that it's going to be Sam Howell. And I know he played well in a game or two in that at the end of the season. But I think as these things go, you're going to be surprised by how this offense looks and how fast they play and how tough they are and how physical they become.
Yeah, I said yesterday on the radio show, this is uncharacteristically good for this organization. Like there has not been a move that has me, at least as an analyst, as excited and optimistic that they have made since I started covering the team in 2015. And that's, multiple quarterback acquisitions. That's, spending big on Landon Collins and pick your coaches, anything. Maybe outside of firing Bruce Allen, there's been nothing that this organization has done that is as good as this, at least on paper. I do want to circle back. This will be the last Commanders question, and I want to get an MJD story out of Logan and a Logan story out of MJD to wrap the show. But let's pretend for a second that it is Sam Howell. That's our best guess right now for who's going to be QB1. How does Eric manage that relationship? His OC life so far has been pretty blessed. He got to work with Patrick Mahomes. But how does he then go from a guy he's been working with with 5 years, by the way, as well, to a guy in his second year, very inexperienced, and obviously that was what Mahomes was when he inherited him. But how does he make that shift back and do it with Sam Howell, who is definitively not Patrick Mahomes?
Well, I'll say that I think when you talk about Patrick Mahomes, let's remember he kind of was out there as a gunslinger at first, right? Like he was just throwing the ball, and from my understanding, there was a lot of corrections throughout the week of look, you can't do this, you can't do that, whatever it may be. And they were able to kind of hone it in where he understood, okay, in these situations, I can do this or that. I think it's important that he just gets to understand who Sam Howell is and what he does best, right? What he does well, we do that as much as possible. What he doesn't do as well, we try to make that better for him. And so that's kind of what the quarterback play is. Now, you're going to have some thick skin. You're going to have to be tough. And so, I mean, part of that is going to be like, don't make the same mistake twice, right? Like, and I think that's where Bieniemy kind of gets a little frustrated is, well, I think we all would. Like, if I correct you, you're an adult. You shouldn't make the same mistake twice. And so I think that's going to be a good thing. I think tough love is always good. Like, I've never been in a situation, like, again, I've played, if you look at, okay, I'll say this. We don't talk enough about how Tom Brady and his relationship with Bill Belichick was, how it was tough love, right? People say, and I haven't never been in those meetings, but at the beginning of every year, Bill Belichick would show all Tom's terrible plays and go at him. And Tom then leads them to a championship. Bruce Arians, another tough guy to play with, will MF you up and down the field, right? Yet he gets multiple head coaching jobs, right? He gets to do whatever, like, and so to me, I think tough love is how it works. Even with Mahomes, it's been tough love, right? I want to say who is the Sean McVay, not as much tough love, but you guys had him there in Washington, right? Like,
he's still got a high standard though. Like, and it's not negotiable. It might be communicated a little differently, but like this
high standard.
One of my favorite sayings ever that I've used in life comes from Sean, and it is the standard is the standard. And it just says like it is non-negotiable.
That is a Mike Tomlin staple. That's when you talk about the standard being the standard, those are the greats talk about that. Mike Tomlin's never had a losing season. Sean McVay, I worked for the Rams. I mean, took that organization and flipped it like that, right? So, so I think that is, if you're Sam Howell or any offensive player coming in, that has to be your mindset going in, is that, look, it's not going to be easy, but it's going to be worth it.
Real quick, Mo, do you think that his aggressive coaching style is conducive for a young quarterback, or do you think it's like sink or swim, or do you think he'll temper himself a little bit?
I think he'll temper. He's not like he was at UCLA, Logan. Trust me.
I still have like
I've been
Logan's scarred. He's got nightmares.
Listen, it's so funny. I was in a meeting with him in Kansas City, and like I told you, he's two things he doesn't like. He doesn't like being lied to, and he doesn't like correcting the same mistake, right?
Yeah.
Kareem Hunt, this is early in the year. Kareem Hunt's there, and I'm sitting in as an analyst now. I'm just sitting in listening to the meetings. I'm supposed to catch a flight. I done moved my flight back. I'm hanging out with him. Petrie's there. It's in the summertime. And I think Kareem Hunt fumbled. So Bieniemy was like, "Hey man, do we have a fumble today?" And they was like, "Oh no, nobody said anything." So I'm sitting there like, "Oh, I don't know. I was working." We're watching the game film, and the ball hits the ground. My heart dropped to my toes.
I was going to say,
remember what it used to be like. I remember what it used to be like. You know what I'm saying? And he paused the tape. He turned around, and I'm like, "Oh, here it comes! I can't wait." But mind you, I still feel like I'm 17, 18 in this thing. Like, I'm nervous. And he's like, "Why would you lie to me? That's $200 for lying to me. Put it on the board."
Just super chill. Golly, that's so
chill.
different. That's so different.
I said, "No way." I stopped the meeting myself. I said, "Bro, I'm done with this. I'm leaving." He was like, No. I said, "Bro, I can't believe that's how you are now. These guys this is nothing." But again, like, he understands the times have changed. Obviously, the kids are different, and there's certain ways to go at people, but every now and then you have to go back to like making sure people understand, like, this is not okay. Right. Yeah. And I think that's with Sam Howell, him being so young, you can be harder on him because that's all he knows. Yeah, right. Yeah. When you get a guy 4, 5, 6 years into it, 7, 8, 10 years into it, right? Like, let's say if you went and got Derek Carr, that's going to be tough because Carr's been used to certain type of coaching, even though Gruden is a tough coach. And even though McDaniels is a tough coach and all this, like, if he hasn't been coached by Bieniemy or been coached by that type for long, it's tough. And that's why for Mahomes, you ever hear Mahomes talk about him? He's like, he's EB.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Like,
this is all I know. I don't know anything else. This is what I know as to be the league. So I think it's good for him there.
All right. Logan, you get to go first. It can be a football story. It can be a whatever you want. Your favorite Maurice, like if someone's like, "Hey, you played with Maurice Jones-Drew at UCLA. What was he like?" What's the story
Well, first off, if someone asked me that, I say Maurice was the most generous, kind person when it came to giving other people on the team credit. Like he was legitimately up for the Heisman, one of the most productive players in UCLA history. And in every post-game interview and every interaction on the field, he was always like, "Oh, it's the O-line that gets that done. It's this guy that made this block." He never called it on himself, right? And that was something that I internalized early on. I thought, man, that if there's a way to be as a pro, as a teammate, it's like that. And so that's something that I always just internalized. And he probably didn't even know that, but like that's something I respected the heck out of. Also, two stories. One is Maurice had to get his pants personally fitted for his legs because his thighs are so big. And the other thing was, I remember it was my freshman year. We were playing, I think it was Oregon State. And I was on the sideline. I'm getting ready to go out for punt. It's like 3rd and short. And Maurice like runs like an ISO like he's talking about. And he runs in the hole. And it is the loudest hit I have ever heard in my entire life. And his helmet, I thought his helmet popped off. And I was like, oh my gosh, like that's a crazy hit. It was a first down, whatever. And then he comes to the sideline after. I was like, oh, he must have got concussed. He must be dinged up. And he had freaking split the helmet right down the center of the seam.
Oh my God.
And then I remember him talking on the sideline to the trainer, and he was like, oh yeah. And the trainer was like, oh man, Maurice, you did it again? And I was like, what? And he goes, yeah, I did this twice last year. And I was like, get the heck out of here. So if you want to know how built different Maurice Jones-Drew is, he just cracks helmets like it's going out of style. So that was something I was like, man, I'm playing with somebody, A, who's an awesome individual, and B, who runs harder than anybody else I've ever seen in my entire life. So
I'll tell you this about Logan, because it's not many stories, because I think I was 20, 21, and Logan was 18, so we weren't hanging out at the same stuff. But if you didn't know, if someone asked, only reason I knew Logan, to be honest with you, is because of two things. He came in, he might have been the strongest freshman I'd ever seen in my life lifting weights. And I was like, who's this guy coming in there? He never talked, though. He never said 2 words. Yeah. And the only reason you knew he was in the huddle is because I would try to look at everybody in the huddle, and he'd be in there. Like, I was like, bro, I used to ask Mercedes, like, do you talk to him? Like, I think Mercedes talked to Ryan Moya more than he talked to you.
It was very quiet.
We had 2 freshman tight ends. Like, he didn't say a word, but you knew when he was dominating the guy, and Imbo was like screaming and yelling for him. And then obviously I followed UCLA thereafter and was excited to see him get drafted. And then you were dominating people with Chris Horton for the Washington other team, obviously before that. So, I think it's more than anything, what I do remember about all those guys is that we all died together.
Yeah.
Like, no one knows what it's like to roll at UCLA at Drake Stadium. No one knows what it's like to run those stadiums in the morning. Yeah. No one knows what it's like to work out with Doc Crease. So our bond, even though we may not see each other all the time, like this is the first time in probably 10 years I've seen him. Yeah. We still have that bond of going through some stuff that not every person went through. And that respect is more than enough for me to do whatever it takes to help Logan out, because I felt bad for people when we were at UCLA, but it was hard.
Dude, so Craig's a strength coach, so Craig knows something. So we had a running workout. I'm trying to remember exactly what it was, but it was 50 by 30 by 20, and it wasn't like, oh, that's one thing. It was by 10, and that was the first half of the workout. So and then we do it again.
Oh, dude, we didn't warm up. So this is what we used to do. Doc Crease on every other day he'd have this thing. Rest his soul, man. Still one of the greatest dudes out there. Yeah. We ran. First of all, the worst workout we ever did. I don't know if you did this one. We ran 100 yards in
strength shoes,
jumping shoes, strengthening jump shoes.
I'll miss that one.
Oh, like the old ones that had like the little thing on it.
The thing in the front, like the little cylinder in the front.
Yeah,
the jumping shoes.
Yeah.
We ran 100 yards in those. 20 of them. Guys were blowing Achilles left and right. I think 4 or 5 guys went down. That was the first one.
And it says on the shoe, do not run.
But we ran in them on grass, on grass, not on anything else. Then the workout that Logan's talking about, he would call them, I forgot what he called them, but it was like 50 back, 40 back, 30 back, 20 back, 10 back. You had to do that 10 times. That was one though. So that was the one. That was the first part. And then you'd be like, all right, now we're done with phase 1. Phase 2 is 20 by 15 by 5 for 20. And I was just like, this is so, and you don't know any different, but people are falling out, people are throwing up, and you're just out there just trucking away. So when Mo says like these workouts were crazy, like they were
crazy. I remember we had a full sheet of lifting, like compound lifts, and
Mhm.
the auxiliary sheet would have been its workout in its own right. So you'd be in there for 4 hours lifting weights, and I had to go to class for 2 hours, come back, and I do the other half of the workout. And they were like, "Make sure you finish. You had to sign a sheet in."
I
It
probably
was
honestly
nuts.
benefited you. You didn't need to do 4 hours straight. Class
No,
class
but
was a nice
it
break.
ended up helping me out. But there was stocked at some. I remember doing stadiums. We had to do like 50 up in Drake. You know what I mean? Up and
Yeah.
down 50 times, which is a huge stadium. And it was
Dude,
just
we
like that
ran.
was what we did.
Okay, so my freshman year, which again, like I said, I'm so happy you weren't there. My freshman year, after spring break, we ran 130s
130s.
sprints.
130s.
130s. This is now. Some of us went to Mexico. Some
Yes.
people didn't do anything. We came back the first day, 130s before a spring ball. Like it just. Oh, and then the weight.
Yeah.
What was his? Doc Kreese would tell you, like, I don't care. Put the weight on the bar.
Yeah.
and get it
He
done.
had like a sheet, and it was like 400 pounds. And it was like, "Doc, I can't squat that." He's like, "Yeah, you are." And you're like, "Okay." So all your buddies would be around the weight, like, "Come on, man!" Like,
It was
That's-
insane, man. And so, like I said, there's probably about 100 dudes. We're in a chat too, which is awesome.
Yeah.
There's probably about 100, 120 guys that, if they ever needed anything from me because we went through that, I'd
Yeah.
be like, look, I'll figure it out for you. Because, and then the best part about it too, most guys would complain. Most guys did complain. And like I told you, Logan never said a word. I didn't even know Logan could talk at one point. Like I was just
Correct.
like, who is this dude?
Correct. And I was also like, I just didn't want to get in trouble. Like that was like my whole thing. Cause like that was like when hazing was still a thing. And like Khalil, you remember Khalil Bell? I'm sure you still
Oh
talk
my
to Khalil.
God, Khalil Bell.
He would not
I
shut
see his
up.
brother. Oh my God.
And everyone would pick on him all the time, and he'd get in trouble, and they'd tie his clothes up and put it in the laundry. And I was like, I just don't want to be that guy. So if no one knows I'm here, I'm not going to get picked on.
Dude, listen, I don't think anyone. I would have never let anyone haze you or anything like that because you didn't do anything.
Yeah,
Like
right.
we had like a quarterback, Osar, who like
Cyrus Sean, yeah.
he just did the craziest stuff. Like this. So this is what I'm trying to tell you. Logan never said anything. He was invisible majority of the time, right? He sat like in the
Served me
middle.
well. Served me
Like
well.
it served him well. But we had some guys that would just say and do stuff. And you'd be like, bro, you know what's gonna happen. Like, why are you bothering these guys? And then people would come to me like, why are you letting this happen? I'm like, listen, I can only tell these dudes one or two
Yeah.
things, right? Like some of these guys were gangsters, right? So I'm like,
Yeah.
hey, I'm
Dude,
trying to
that's
make it
true.
up out of here too. It was
From
it
Crenshaw,
was
Compton, there's some
yeah,
guys there that would.
we had some rough dudes. So it was just like smart by you. I was the opposite. I was like Khalil Bell. I just fought every day my freshman year. Like every day we got into a fight.
Well, that's why you and EB got along. You know, like EB, I feel like gravitates towards that type of personality. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? Like that kind of loud guy, because it's like they can be loud together, they can fight, and it just works out. You know what I mean?
And you're
And
friends. You can
Yes.
be friends at the end of the day. Like it's like,
Yes.
oh, we fought. It's okay.
yeah,
Like we'll go back and it's weird, but I am excited to I guess to bring it back full circle. I'm excited to see what kind of mindset this offense takes on.
yeah,
Right? I know Scott Turner. He's not as what's the word? It's not aggressive because he has aggressive play calling, but he's not as
like demonstrative. Like
yeah,
he's not.
he's not as loud, right? He's kind of like to himself too. He'll be cool, he'll talk. But
It seemed like very different teachers.
Now that's the one thing Bieniemy is, and I didn't harp on that. He is a teacher. He's probably one of the best teachers I've ever been around in my life. To this day, that's why I could coach now, is because football is so simple to me. Kyle Shanahan and Eric Bieniemy are the two best teachers I've ever been around. A guy coming from a triple veer option in high school to learn the West Coast offense was not easy.
Yeah,
But within a month, I was able to know every position, what everyone did. So expect it. Oh, that's the other thing too. Expect to see everyone playing every position.
Yeah.
You know, very, very similar to what the Jags did with Christian Kirk and some of those other guys. You'll see a lot of that as well. So
very excited for that for sure. Maurice, this was awesome.
Dude, thanks,
really
man. Appreciate
great
it.
to have
No
you.
problem, man.
Would love to have you back in the future. And
yeah, please. Hopefully things go well. So when I come back, I can say I told you so.
Yeah,
right?
no,
So knock
by
on
all
wood.
means. And we'll all be in Indy next week. So if we want to get together and say hello and not run any sprints or lift any
Yeah.
weights or anything,
I'll be in Indy on Monday. So if you're out there, you have my number.
I don't have your number. I'll get it after.
Yeah.
It's in the group chat, Logan.
It's in the
I'll
group chat.
I'll get it from
there you go.
It's the only 904 number in the group chat.
Okay, I got it. Nailed it.
All right, Maurice Jones-Drew, everybody, with us on Take Command. Thanks for watching this clip of Take Command. First, why don't you like it? It lets other people know that it was good, and then they should watch it too. And Logan, we have a new exclusive home for full episodes.
We do. 1067 The Fans YouTube page. Go check it out and please subscribe.
Yeah, do what Logan said.
Do
He's
it.
Very, very smart.